Next on.
The Montesinuses must pay for the threats that they've made, and for making you live in fear for such a long time, and for causing me so much pain.
From now on, you must do as I say and ask me everything that has to do with my daughter. Is that clear?
Please stop yelling.
But I'm sure that your father will want to open the doors of this house to that woman.
Well, I won't allow it.
Promise I'm going to find a way to make it up to you for all the emotional and physical struggles you went through.
Next on.
Ashanti Kotoko.
I don't wanna be lonely tonight.
No, 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 no. We're the survivors.
Is how you interpret. Cause the belly of the beast not too far off from what's on the surface.
Unichukulie kwa mfano ndani ya matatu.
Yaani mtu mzima na miaka zake hizo miaka zote. Mtu ajui kujua kuandika notes. Notes tu peke yake. Kusoma kweli itasaidia.
Jana hizo. Nini nakusumbua na nini?
Nauliza. Ni bwana.
There. Okay.
Mama yetu.
Haya, kwani ni vita? Nini wewe? Yaani wataka kumpiga. Huwezi mpika mpike nini?
A very good morning to you. My name is Daniel Wahome and welcome to Sports Check on this Monday morning. It is the first day of March 2021. Happy new month to everyone and lots of conversation around sport. We're going to be talking about rugby. Competitive rugby is back for the Kenyan teams. That's at club level and at international level. And we'll be having a former Kenya Sevens coach and a person who's also played for Kenya Sevens, Felix Ochieng, to break down what was happening in Madrid and also in Nairobi, Nakuru and Kakamega. We should also be having a conversation about athletics because on Wednesday, the Confederation of African Athletics made an announcement that the postponement of the Africa Cross Country Championships is on. Barnaba Korir, who's an Athletics Kenya Executive Committee member, will be telling us all about it and also the calendar that's changing by the day. We shall also be having a conversation about football. Remember that KBC Channel 1 the entire family is your true sports partner. The CAF Under-20 Championship, the Africa Cup of Nations for that age group. We also had the CAF Champions League matches yesterday. And coming in the week, the DFB Pokal. So all that and more as we keep up with what's happening in the news, including the one story where the selection panel that was appointed by President Uhuru Kenyatta, and this is to appoint the chairperson and one commissioner of the Teachers Service Commission, is getting to work this morning, and this is at the Public Service Commission offices. So the panel that is going to be chaired by Mr. Thomas Koyer is going to be inaugurated officially this morning. That's at around 11 a.m. That's one of the stories that we are going to be following up on. And we get straight into a conversation, and the first one's about rugby. And they say rugby teaches character, and a lot of character has had to be exhibited over the weekend. Shuja, they were in Spain for the Madrid Sevens, played over 2 weekends. This weekend that came to a close, and also on the weekend of the 20th and 21st of February. Shuja, that's the men's team, they won all their matches with the exception of those that they played against Argentina. Incidentally, they were the last matches at the round-robin phase and also in the finals of those two tournaments. And straight into conversation with Felix Ochieng. And Felix, a very good morning to you.
And a good morning to you too.
And first, overall, this is the team that you've handled, some of the players you've seen grow. Your take on Shuja at the Madrid Sevens?
I think, first of all, we need to recognize the fact that a lot of these teams are getting back into playing after a long year off because of COVID and the pandemic. So it was always going to be interesting with regards to their results and how they're going to fare against opposition. I think everyone was trying to see where they're in terms of fitness, structures and everything. In terms of consistency, obviously that was impressive to see that we're able to put back-to-back wins, and play with some form of structure. And I think because a lot of players were also playing against each other, with each other, the players have just been brought in by the head coach, Namco. So what we see is that teams that were trying to gel with each other, and it was all the other teams, Portugal, Spain, USA, mix and match after a whole year layoff, coming back. So I think the consistency in performance was impressive, and there's a lot of learnings and improvements that we've seen going forward, and it was exciting, apart from the exception, which I think we'll talk about later.
We'll talk about Argentina in detail,
yes,
because that's
exactly.
a whole story by itself. But let's first of all look at Saturday's results. 26-12 against Portugal, yes. And this is a Portugal side that they played with a week before, and the result was 36-5. The difference in results?
I think, first of all, you're playing 5 days apart. You're playing one Saturday and another Saturday. It's always very, very difficult, also replicated in the World 7 series, to change and chop match during that time. And teams get to learn from each other, so it's almost like you're playing this weekend and then the next weekend you're back. So Portugal obviously have improved, obviously, and learned a few things in terms of there. And that's why I'm saying it's important to note that the consistency in those wins against those other teams is what we need to be consistent about, And that is actually what was happening. And I think, as you can see, match fitness was improving. There's no substitute for match fitness. So the more you play, the better you become, as I think. So I think in terms of the difference of the gaps, it's just that, they've been in camp, they've been the same. The coaches have analyzed the other teams, and I think we did enough and we're consistent enough to still, outplay them in the second round, despite the fact that the score was short, the gap was smaller.
Spain was the exception. It's the one team that, kind of gave Kenya a hard time yesterday, considering that the first match was 19-5. Again, 19 points for Shuja yesterday, but Spain seemed to be finding some ways around the team.
Yeah, I think Spain for the longest time, and obviously have been the most consistent team, also coming for Safari 7. So I think they know our terrain, they know our boys. And when you look at even the World 7 series in 2019 and 2020, Spain have always put up some amazing performances and made it to a few quarterfinals. In terms of their structures and what they're doing, Spain are always one of those teams where you don't give them opportunity. They play with a lot of passion, their levels of skill and their basics are very, very well. And they've always been, it's just one of those teams that when Kenya Sevens plays, they always, almost can I say, they have our number. They always give us a hard time, but it was always important to come out with a win because they are a pretty good side.
Let me talk about the US. And if you look at say from the 2017 season, post the Olympics, let me put it that way, the United States have been knocking on the doors, of trying to lift the series. But here was a US side that Kenya beat twice.
Yeah, I think for the US and Adam McFriday, he's never afraid of of trying out new things or trying out new players or just starting from where he left off. Obviously, they've had a very, very good squad over the years. They've been very consistent. Their structures and they're a side who, as you've mentioned, really, really, really have been consistent at the world level. And you mentioned knocking on the doors of even winning a series, the year when Fiji just took it away from the jaws. Basically, there are a lot of players who are now being given the opportunity to prove themselves in that squad. A lot of players who've been there before, trying to show positions of leadership. So for me, as you can see, the way USA was playing, obviously it's not a result that they wanted in terms of consistency, but I think they're going to learn from that, and I think they'll go back to the drawing board like everyone else and come back better. So that's what I believe. I think for Kenya also. For the USA, it's like, these are the players you've been put in a position, to represent and make that position yours, understand the processes and execute. So it's a great learning point. It'll be interesting to see what the team comprises of, in the next warm-up tournament.
Now, let's talk about Chile. This is a country that has got a very huge history when it comes to rugby in South America. They love the sport. They play it well. Your take on how they played, and this was as an additional side for the second weekend of the Madrid Sevens.
Yeah, I think the beauty about Sevens, especially for countries like, Chile, Spain, Brazil.
Uruguay.
Yeah, Uruguay. They've really, really picked up the game, and it has also increased the development of the sport in that region. And obviously, we would like to argue and say, obviously coming from a very passionate and skillful level in terms of football, it would be easy for them to transform into the game. So Chile's, they'll not fall short of passion. They'll not fall short of excitement, or short of taking up opportunities. I think where they fall short is that they just haven't played enough at that level, and also in terms of building their strength level, because it's all about strength as well at that particular level. So if you look at the Chileans and teams like Uruguay, I think it's just a matter of how well they step up into the game. And the more games they play, the more we will be seeing them in various tournaments and putting up performances. So it's impressive to see the game, spread into countries like Chile, because it's good for the sport and it's good for the country. It's good to keep it going.
Now, let's talk about Argentina. 4 losses against Argentina. And if you were to consider this, that in this season, Argentina has stood out, and their 15th side defeated New Zealand. It was a shock result, but let's look at their 7th side. What is it that they are doing right at this point in time?
I think for Argentina, even coming from the backdrop of the World Seven Series just before the pandemic, other than being excited in taking up their options, they've obviously very, 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 very consistent in their basics. All right, and that's one of their players. In terms of open play, they're also one of those teams that keep the ball alive and take the opportunities when they're going. And it's one of those teams that never give up. If you see how they're playing, they never give up. And credit to the coaching team for them to pick up from where they left and to come into these two tournaments at the Madrid Sevens and be consistent throughout. For the longest time, we know Argentina will always be a force to reckon with. They've got a team, and they are always also not afraid to experiment with young players and coming through and give them an opportunity. So it's exciting to see Argentina come through. Obviously, not at the expense of Kenya Sevens, but obviously it was we were the track end of that. And I think they also, for me as a former Kenya Sevens coach, I think the management team are very analytical in terms of how they play the different teams. If you saw along both, I think they play according to who they're playing, and they seem to minimize their weaknesses and identify areas in which and take the opportunities. So I think that one, they were very, very, we fell short, unable to counter that for the number of games we played them over the 7 days, and that's a worrying point.
And I want to bring out something I noticed when it comes to the Kenya Sevens team, and I will talk about 2 scenarios where there were mauls. One was against Chile, and eventually the ball was stolen away, right inside there. The second one is where you have about 6 Kenyan players against 1 Argentine player, and then he just did a basketball pass from inside the maul, and it was a try. How physical are our boys at the moment?
As mentioned, it was always going to be very, very exciting, coming from a year where they haven't played in the competition. And I've mentioned before that it's very difficult to substitute match fitness. So what this tournament did, it allowed us and it allowed our team to gauge where they are physically, from a strength and conditioning point of view, to gauge where we are, in terms of our endurance, and obviously to gauge where we are in terms of that particular endurance over a period of 14 minutes. Now, in terms of strength, obviously there are areas where I know they will come back and they know now that they need to work on. And then obviously with regards to their structures, many things went well. But obviously the scenario that you're talking about, and happens quite a bit in rugby, is where you get into a situation where you overchase, you all congregate towards the ball. So if that ball is moved away from a crowded space to an open space, then it leaves open on that side. So I think it's just a matter of the team and the players scanning and taking an opportunity to see where are they on the pitch, and the responsibility of that person to ensure that the ball doesn't come out. Because if you chase the ball to one end, you have to ensure that the ball doesn't come out from that end, or you either slow it down to allow your team. So I think that's one of the areas that we really needed to pick up, to stop over chasing the ball to the end. And if we get to that point, make sure that the ball doesn't come out back into the open space. So it's not that. It's one of those situations, and sevens is such a short game that you only have one opportunity to make the right kind of decisions, either in defense and attack. And that's just an example of where we did not make the right decision and resulted in, obviously, points for Argentina.
How well is the team responding to defensive duties, from the transition from attack to defense, or from defense to attack?
Yeah, I think that's obviously something interesting. It also has a lot to do with the levels of fitness, because with teams that are operating at that particular level, like Argentina, who are shifting the ball very, very quickly, between the set pieces, it's one of those things where I don't think all the players were at the same level in terms of that one, and you need all players to be able to transition more or less at the same, or understand their structures and everything. So as I mentioned, it was a learning, for them to be able to say, okay, fine, this is an area that hasn't worked out for us in terms of how we transition into from attack or to defense. While at the same time, how do we ensure, our one-on-one tackles and ball retention, we ensure that we keep it at where it is. So I saw a lot of areas that obviously will need improving. And I think, as mentioned, after a whole year out on the pandemic, I think the players then, the more they play together and train together, the more now they understand how to transition. And when you play different teams, different attack styles and everything, then you learn how to chop and change and how to gauge whether your structures on defense are working and whether we're transitioning quick enough. Obviously, there are examples, like you've noticed, that allowed other teams to get opportunities. And when you start bringing in other teams, that are consistent in the World Series, it just means that we really now need to be a bit more sharp and a bit more decisive in making our decision.
Now, I want you to mention three things from three perspectives. Number one, what needs to be retained as far as the style of play is concerned, what needs to be improved, and what actually needs to be totally changed.
So the first one was, what needs to be...
What needs to be retained? What do you keep?
What do we keep? I think for me, our ball carries, whether in and out of space, was very, very key. We've got people who, when they got the gap, they went as fast as possible. For what that meant is that we're using our physicality and our speed to get to the ball as far as possible into the field. And that obviously was drawing defenders. So, when we're able to retain three phases and the ball comes out, it was very easy for us to push. And I think also in terms of how we were kicking, our kickoffs were very, very good with Willie, getting another ball. We're always putting other teams under pressure, I think also with USA. So those were very, very good from the lads in terms of kick. So that one we retain. The next one was, what do we need to improve? What do we need to...
What you can say, this is going right, but it can get better.
Okay, I think despite the fact that with regards to the phases, we're getting our phases in, but I think we can be more clinical in terms of our consistency, in terms of our executing our basics. So if we take the ball in for a rack, we should ensure that the ball comes out, and then our passes, should be put into the space to where the players are. And I think that's one of the things that we're doing, but we can do well in terms of our basics. I don't think we struggle with physicality and strength and everything, but if we're able to execute our basics better, whether it's our tackling, our passing, our rack attack or defense, then it means that we'll be a bit more consistent in drawing in defenders and putting our players in space.
And finally, what needs 100%? What needs an overhaul, if you were to, from your coaching eyes?
I see that players are finding themselves in a decision when they break, when the line break, there's always the temptation to offload.
Aha.
Yes, we had a lot of those opportunities because the fact that, you know, you break the line and they made the tackle. I mean, we've got big boys and people who are able to release their hands, and some offloads didn't work, as you noticed.
Yes.
It ended up in the opposition's hands. Personally, you know what, for our kind of game, I would not make it a policy in terms of offloading. You know, I would rather formulate a policy where knowing when not to offload. You know what, we should try and go as far as possible and knowing when not to offload. So we shouldn't go into a game saying, if I make a break, I should always try and toss the ball and look, because I've made a break, so I'm sure my players are behind. But it should be like, is this the best decision to offload at this point, or should I just go as far as possible and then create a platform?
Don't be Fiji.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, just play, and I think the players will be able to make a decision when not to offload. I'm not saying when to offload, because everyone they'll know when to, but they'll get into a position where, listen, I'm in this position, let me consolidate, let me play inwards into the game, leg carry as much as possible, stay on my feet as much as possible until my team comes, and then we play, which speaks now to the phases, because the more we do that, it means that teams then have to transition quicker into defense, allowing us to use our players out wide, our speed in terms of that and our strength.
Very well. Now let's talk about the Kenya Lioness. We are speaking with Felix Ochieng. He is a former coach of the Kenya National 7 side, Shujaa. Kenya Lioness were also in Madrid, and on the weekend of the 20th and 21st, it was a weekend to forget. They played all their matches, and there were 6 teams involved. They did not win a single game. But this weekend, there was a whole change of results. 17-5 they lost to Russia, but they defeated Spain 22-0, and Poland defeated Kenya 12-10 before they lost in the final 19-0 last evening. And the Kenya Lioness at the moment, we've seen a full transition. There seems to be a transition. It's, if you were to look at the side 3-4 years ago, it looks like it's now half those who are there and half of younger players who are coming in.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable in terms of transition into players, and it's important that we keep on, especially the Kenya Lionesses, where, you know, women's rugby is picking up, to keep on identifying younger players who, I mean the league, the women's league was played on Sunday.
On Sunday, yes,
yeah,
in Nakuru.
So, yes, in Nakuru. So there are lots of people coming through because of the amount of rugby that's been played, you know, and credit to the clubs and the structures around the women games, allowing them to play a lot and talented to come through. So I think now it has been a deliberate decision, you know, and the coach obviously hails from those areas and has worked with women for a long time. It's important that we start building these young players into the squad, because as you've mentioned rightfully, you know, we've had a squad that have done us justice for the longest time. And the reason for that also is because they do not have too many tournaments to play. All right? So you end up working with the same squad, you know, for qualification, for the Olympics and stuff like that. But now that their tournaments are becoming more consistent, all right, it means that we have to start introducing new players and building our pool, our base of players for the women's to be able to feed into the national team, because I believe there's talent. You know, I believe they're passionate about it and stuff like that. So now it's going to become more and more difficult to, you know, to maintain probably the same kind of players from that particular area, especially now that we're in 2021. You know, a lot of those players who've taken us through the last 5, 7, 10 years, you know, and credit to them for bringing the sport to where it is, you know, but it's time that we keep on now working with fresh blood in terms of young talented players, while at the same time exposing them to many tournaments, you know, whether satellite and international. The unfortunate thing is that, you know, our mobility and the pandemic is not allowing us to do that. All right, so any opportunity means that we've got to take it.
Now, and you know, on the weekend of the 20th and 21st, playing against France, playing against the United States, playing against Russia, playing against Spain, it was a really tough call for the Lionesses, considering that all these teams are core in the Women's World Series. And for the Lionesses, when do they get to play? And they play Dubai, get invited to France, maybe Hong Kong when they're going for the qualifiers, and the Africa Cup Sevens. What else? I mean, how well do you see them play?
I mean, now that's the harsh reality of sport. You know, once we found ourselves in that position and we've qualified for Olympics and we keep on invited for Dubai, we are now in a position where, you know, once we're in that position and we want to be considered the best or to pit ourselves against the best, we have no excuses, all right? The opportunities are amazing, and it's a harsh reality, because when you get into that level and you're playing against core team, you know, they've played tournaments in Europe, they've played amongst themselves in the US and stuff like that. So it makes it very difficult if you're not getting match fitness or if you're not playing consistently either within your region or within opposition where you've created like in a camp and say you're always playing. So now we're in that position, what next? And that weekend, as you said, it was tough learning. You know, if we want to go into the series, it means that we've got to play those particular teams day in, day out. And you saw they were absolutely ruthless. You know, they take no prisoners at that particular level. And they were always going to try and have a balance between match fitness while executing their structures. Because those are teams that have been used to that and know we've played at this level, we can keep going and stuff like that. So we're in that position. What do we do next? There's a lot that needs to be done as well. And that whatever needs to be done needs to be complemented by fixtures, by tournaments, because, you know, training all through without gauging where you are, you know, then it shows. So now we should start from there and say these were the results, you know, and credit to them, you know, they went out and they held their own. You know, you could see, you know, the Lionesses are now starting to show some levels. You know, they're not going, they may have lost all the games, but it's not embarrassing. All right?
Yes.
You know, it's not like, oh, you guys lost all the game. I mean, Kenya Sevens were there once before. We used to go and lose all games on a weekend. Then we win one game, and then slowly. So also, not that we want to be patient, but we also got to understand that this is a starting point, and from there we pick up the learnings and we move, as you rightfully mentioned, following the next weekend.
I will pick out something that came out from the weekend, and this is because the teams were in a bubble when they were in Madrid, and that meant that every 3 or 4 days they had to take a PCR test, that's a test for coronavirus, and there were some false positives, but the United States team, the women's team specifically, decided that they were not going to participate as a cautionary measure. How much of an impact did that decision have overall on the tournament, Felix?
Yeah, I think obviously when you don't want to see teams not participating, especially after traveling and training, especially for the players. You know, it's really tough. You really want to get out there, play and pitch yourself against these other teams. We're obviously playing within a pandemic, and we understand that obviously sport, you know, it's one of those things that is obviously leading the charge in terms of how we are managing this, because we've got so many sports people playing. Obviously, the USA pulling out obviously then affected the format, and we know the USA as a team obviously are forced to reckon with in the series. So you want to have them in the tournament, and though it's unfortunate they're not there, I mean, you've got to, player welfare obviously still comes at the forefront. You know, you've got to put, not the player, as we always say with the pandemic, it's not you as an individual, but it's about protecting others. You know, so they didn't want to. So it actually affected the tournament, and I think it's tough on the players as well. But I think it was, you know, it was the right decision, you know, for the welfare and understanding of all the other teams that were participating.
Now it's turning out that in this coronavirus times, the team manager is a very important cog as far as planning is concerned. From what you have seen and, you know, from the conversations you've had in the rugby circles, what are the biggest learning lessons when it comes to planning around these things? You know, having players in a bubble, organizing for the coronavirus tests, ensuring that players stick to the regulations, and also ensuring that in playing conditions, everything is safe for them.
Yeah, I think no one expected us to be faced in this particular situation going forward, and obviously it's been very, very challenging because it's a pandemic. Every little thing that you're doing, whether you're doing bubbles, whether you're doing player monitoring, contact tracing and testing, it requires resources, you know, sometimes materialistic and sometimes financially. You know, if you're going to do everything possible to keep your players safe, then you have to have all those things in place. So as you've mentioned, you know, your team managers and your doctors have now become key cogs in ensuring that you're delivering your players safe and they're playing in a safe environment, including the environment, and the other team that they're playing. So they've become very, very key. And this has to be supported. Unfortunately, you cannot do that alone. You have to be supported, other than the guidelines, by the resources to be able to test within certain times. When you're talking about a bubble, there's obviously a cost implication to keeping players within a bubble. If we had the way we would keep players in a bubble like what they're doing, in Europe, and they do it with football and the Premier League. So you keep players away from home for the duration of 3 months, and you only have a period where they go and spend time with family. They come back, they're tested and everything like that. So it's becoming, it's a learning, but we've got to learn very, very fast. And I think a lot of stakeholders, whether it's from the federation, the union, the players, the Ministry of Health, a lot has to be done, because we're learning every single day when they come back. And if we're going to replicate that locally, a lot needs to pay focus on that particular one.
And overall, the same three things you spoke about Shujaa, and now let me talk about the Lioness. What to keep, what to improve, what to overhaul.
Yeah, I think in general, I think in terms of the players, first of all, it's to keep working with those players that they had over there, and look at areas to improve on those particular players. Main thing is to keep, because even the Lionesses, we are starting to see a certain style. We know when we line break, we've got the ability to either go to the very end. So we should continue, trying to take up the opportunities when we see the gap. It means that we should be a bit more, intelligent in terms of that. So that we should just keep working with the players and ensuring then that because we could see the spirit.
Yes.
The spirit of the Shujaa and Lionesses coming out. Kenya is always that team that brings a bit of excitement. And obviously the dancing after tries.
We are the land of the lion.
Yes, exactly. So the excitement, when Kenya plays, there's excitement because you don't know what they're going to dance to. Yeah, they did that and then stuff. So that excitement, and because players should be enjoying themselves. So I think as a team, that camaraderie and bond that's been created, that I've seen in both squads, needs to be maintained. In terms of, next was what to change.
Improvement.
Oh, improvement. I think, as I've mentioned, consistency in how we execute our basics. We just keep doing the same things, working on our passing, working on our running lines, working on our rack attack and defense and stuff like that. I think those particular things, because everything else then will fall in place. Because we always line break. We have opportunity with the ball in hand, but just the little things, let us down. It's amazing at that level if the best teams just consistently perform the basics right, at that particular level. So I think that should be a focus as well. And if they do that, whether it's tackle, pass, run, catch, I think would be consistent and would now be knocking on the doors of being very consistent in Cup champion.
The overhaul that needs to be done?
I will not move away from the offloads.
The whole thing about flamboyance.
It's good, but you have to train. You have to train. Players make decisions when they're in space, the right kind of decision, and sometimes they work. And that's why I keep on saying knowing when not to offload, because you will know when to offload. All right? Because I think we find ourselves in very, very good spaces. Rather than offload, maybe get ourselves in and out of that space and into a better position, either to create a platform or to give the ball. Because the women also, because people understand it. The opposition is, if a Kenyan player line breaks and I'm slower, if they're about to be caught up, it's more than likely they're going to offload. So they start running within our lines. Then you offload and then the ball is turned over.
That is Felix Ochieng with his, take on the Kenya Lioness, who are in Madrid. They lost in the final of the second weekend, 19 points to 0 to Russia last night. And also, the Kenya Cup is back, and some teams already missing. The Ngong Road gang, Impala, Homeboys, Nondis, and also Mwamba for a club. And you've got to look at Mwamba. They actually are looking for a new home. And first of all, before I even get into how the play went down, your take on how would I describe it? The absence of these four teams.
Yeah, I think as mentioned, we've talked about the new norm, okay? And obviously we all wanted Kenya Cup to resume. Kenya Cup has resumed under different circumstances where there are a lot of factors to be considered, around the pandemic, around COVID testing, around tracing, around hospitalization, because that is obviously key. Now, when you drop down to the club level, it basically means now you're dealing with clubs have to take so much responsibility and plan for that. And 15s, it's not like 7s. So you're talking about 40, 50 players in training, right? And then you're going into fixtures. So I understand, in terms of the 4 clubs that are missing, maybe they felt that they're not in a position, to start going by their own protocols, all right? Maybe they also felt that it's not sufficient. The assurances that they're being given are not sufficient. So you cannot, because player welfare is put first. I'd like to remove, the politics out of it. If
Actually, you don't touch the politics.
Yeah, if I feel that my players will not be safe, then it's a decision that they need to make, because the club is responsible to those parents and friends and relatives of those particular people. So until they get to a point where they feel that they are ready or they feel that the protocols are in place, then so be it, then they will be able to come in. So that is my take on it, because as clubs, every club took a decision, and said, okay, fine, we are happy with the resources and with the prescribed that one will. Others said we are not happy, so we'll take a sit back and see until we feel that we're in a position to, or until we feel that we have enough resources to do that. So you cannot, blame them. Would like all of them to be there, but it's a club decision.
What's the ideal time to get, a team ready for action in 15s rugby?
You need, first of all, a pre-season that obviously lasts not less than 8 weeks before you start going into your match fitness and readiness. And I think other teams also may feel that are not ready, especially in terms of their physical conditioning, that they did not have enough time to get their players ready to start Kenya Cup this particular time. And that can be you have to be very, very cautious and cognizant of that particular fact. So 2 things may have happened, First of all, obviously with the pandemic and sponsorship has pulled out, you can't gather into training. It varies between different clubs who have been able to consistently keep their players in session and others who've been, institutionally been able to keep their players going at that particular level. But from a leadership, from a club point of view, first of all, you go back to the drawing board. You say, how are we going to sustain just ensuring that we're able to get our players to train? How do we support them? How were they doing it before? Because the sport is still amateur. Remember, it's not professional. So the clubs dig deep a lot just to get their players going. And kudos to the clubs that have been doing that. But the biggest factor for this one is, most of the clubs felt that they were not ready from a strength and conditioning point of view or physically to be able to play now.
Now, there was a baptism of fire for Masinde Muliro University of Science and Technology. They lost 56-0 to Kabras Sugar in the Kakamega Derby. What kind of, response should Masinde Muliro have? Because looking at the teams that are there, they'll have to play against KCB, they'll have to play against First Rising Oilers side, they'll have to play against Strathmore and Blood.
Yeah. It's, for the longest time, there's a time where, the teams, when you get relegated, the teams that came up, were able to hold their own. But over the past 4 or 5 years, once the relegation started, it's been more or less the same. We saw a Kisumu side qualify for Kenya Cup, and same kind of results. So it's a case of you come up and you go down immediately, because when keeping up with that levels at the top requires more than just qualification. And we're seeing it now with Masinde Muliro, which was bound to happen because, credit to Masinde Muliro for making it to Kenya Cup for the first time, and they beat Mean Machine to get there. So it's tough for these university sides, but it's also, I find it's a blessing that we're able to see university rugby now coming up, because that is where the bed of young players are. They're able to keep them over a period. The successes of Mean Machine, Strathmore have been a good example of it. USAU had their moments as well. And I'm urging those universities to keep those structures going. Now for Masinde Muliro, it's going to be very, very tough, because now they're gaining their learnings by playing. When you thought, because they qualified, 4 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, so you can't really prepare with other teams in Kenya Cup that have been preparing for Kenya Cup, and you are preparing to qualify. So it also questions our technical structures at the university level. Are we preparing our players at that particular level in terms of strength, physical conditioning, to be able to withstand the physicality of Kenya Cup? Is there such a big divide between Kenya Cup and the championship?
Oilers 39, Kenya Harlequin 13.
Yeah, that was an interesting score. I'll not speak.
You can tell a queen when you see one.
No, I'm very neutral. But anyway, yeah, I think first of all, obviously, credit to Oilers. I mean, we've seen Oilers grow in the last 2 years. They've been very consistent. I think their management has done very well to work with their players. We saw them through the sevens. And obviously this is an example of the work that they've done, so credit for where they are and what they've been doing. Obviously, being a Harlequin is not the result you wanted to see, and because we're getting there. But as I mentioned, the teams haven't played for a very long time, and despite the fact that I'm not giving any excuses, but I think we have to just give credit where it's due. Oilers, they got there with a win and everything, and it's for teams like Harlequins and every other team that lost, to go back to the drawing board and come back next week with a more positive attitude towards the game.
All right, Felix Ochieng, former coach of the national seven-side team, Shuja, speaking to us about rugby, and I want you to give a closing word. Impala 17-5 winners at the KRE Women's Festival. Your closing word on this and the impact it's going to have going forward, especially that it's an Olympic year.
I think on women's rugby, that is amazing, in terms of them being able to play out. That is something that we encourage clubs to do. We encourage the federations to support and stakeholders, and congratulations to those clubs that are pushing women's rugby, because that is where the future is. And on Olympics, generally, obviously, it's an interesting year as well. Heading into the Olympics, we've seen a lot of traction with the teams that have qualified. So it's exciting, that we are having lots of teams. The spirit of going into the Olympics is well true and alive going forward, and I think the teams have been doing well to prepare. So for me, part in short, is just to keep the faith, stay in the race as well, and then wishing all those teams all the best in the preparation, and we do what we can in various positions to support them. It will be an exciting year.
Felix Ochieng, he is a former coach of the Kenya Sevens side, breaking us down everything to do about the Kenya Sevens. They were in Madrid for about 3 weeks and played in 2 tournaments, the Madrid International the weekend of the 20th and 21st, and this weekend that has just passed. And for Shuja, finishing second twice for the Kenya Lioness, playing in the final yesterday and eventually getting a win after 7 straight losses. Thank you very much, Felix.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yes, we'll continue having the conversation about our national teams. We can see you're well labeled as Team Kenya. We know you're involved going into an Olympic year. We'll be taking a short break, and we get back, we'll be speaking about athletics, because for Team Kenya, there has had to be some reorganization. They were to travel to Lome, Togo this week, but that's not going to happen. We'll be speaking with Barnab Korir, who is a member of the Athletics Kenya Executive Committee, about that and much more. A short break is what we are taking, and also at the bottom right of your screen, we've got our sign language interpreter, Lucy Maura. We'll be back in a few.
Tonight on KBC Channel 1.
Na kunyosha maguu kama ambaye analala juu ya kitanda.
Mweke miguu chini. Mweke miguu chini. Songe huko.
Bro, unataka kwa display. Nini bana? Hebu toka hapa bwana. Hii ni soko, kwani uone hii ni soko? Kwani sikitokalia? Wewe toka hapa. Unajua hizi vitu za nani?
Hivyo viti ambavyo vinawekwa hapo ni vya watu kukalia.
Hii tabia mnafanya ni tabia mbaya sana. Kwani hamjafundishwa adabu na mama zenyu?
Ni ungwana kweli?
Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, greetings, Massive and crew. Welcome to the Big Bad Show. This is The Rave,
where radio meets TV each and every Wednesday.
Live on KBC Channel 1 and KBC Radio Taifa. You see me?
Listen to my radio. Here's some
is where we play with the latest and the greatest from homegrown artists to international reggae stars.
Check in the rave with Junior Dread and DJ Stano.
Every Wednesday from 10 p.m.
If you blink, you miss the link.
If you ain't going my way.
Oh no, baby. When Anna got sick, I just couldn't understand it. Why was this loving little girl going through this?
I think your daughter is lactose intolerant.
Acid reflux.
Everything looks okay.
Everything's fine.
Everything is not fine. There's something wrong with our little girl.
Mrs. B, you need to calm down.
I'm not leaving this hospital until I know what's wrong with my daughter.
Unfortunately, the tests confirm that she's very ill. There is currently no cure for Anna's condition.
Doctor, please, this is our little girl. I'm scared, Mom. Me too.
And we'll get it.
How?
By not losing our faith.
How long you been married? 14 years. Free her from this. Can you even hear me?
This is my fight song. Take back my life.
So you're telling me?
Welcome back to Sports Check on this Monday morning. It is the first day of March, the year 2021. We're getting into a conversation now about athletics, and this is because of information that came through on Wednesday. It was a one-paragraph statement that was made by the Confederation of African Athletics that the Africa Cross Country Championships had been postponed for a third time. And to get into a conversation about that is Barnaba Korir, who's a member of the Athletics Kenya Executive Committee. And let's get into a conversation with him. He's speaking to us via Zoom from Eldoret. And a very good morning to you, Barnaba.
Good morning to you too.
And first of all, I think on Wednesday when we got onto that little chart about the message that came through from the Confederation of African Athletics about the postponement for the third time of the Africa Cross Country Championships, the reaction from the federation.
Yes, thank you, Ome. I think it was the most unfortunate news that we received. In fact, we were not aware of the news until I received from KBC that the cross country has been postponed yet again. And the federation, the president of Athletics Kenya was not aware, but of course we took it in stride. It was postponed last year. And due to COVID-19, the continuous increase, I think they found it wise that they postponed it. But it is unfortunate for our athletes. They were ready, and going by the trials that we had in Nairobi, they were in high spirits. They had already started training in Embu, and of course now we had to cancel them to talk to them so that they can really understand what is going on. But it is really bad, but they are really at least understanding what the problem is going on in the world now.
I think on that Wednesday is when I think the team had received their allowances and the kitting was to be done on Thursday, which means that the team that traveled there had to deliver a different message. What was the first reaction from the athletes in camp and the message that was passed through by the Vice President of Athletics Kenya, Mr. Mutui, who's also the Director of Competitions?
Yes, the Director of Competition, the Vice President, Mr. Paul Mutui, was also in Embu to give them the allowances and also the equipment. But also he was not aware until he came back, and we had to send some people also the next day to inform our athletes. They are still in the camp, and we are now organizing to terminate that camp because we were hoping that another country, that country would come to rescue or to salvage the event. We are still waiting communication from our president, Retired General Tuwei, to tell us exactly if there's been any country or a third country that can come and rescue this event. If not, then the athletes will have to come and go home and wait for any other information that might come out of this paperwork.
Now, when it comes to organizing an Africa cross-country championships in coronavirus times, it's very difficult because you could give some insights into the protocols that had been put out by Togo for teams that were going to participate at the event, and if they were to be used in another country, say, for example, if Ethiopia or Kenya decide to bid to host the event.
Yes, you know, for those an event, you require time, and normally there is always a plan B in case there is an emergency from the hosting country. But apparently, it looks like we didn't have any, and Ethiopia would have been ready, also Kenya. But of course, we did not get information on time, so it is almost impossible now to really ask the government to salvage the situation. But in the future, I think the Confederation of Athletics in Africa should look into issues that concern competitions. We don't want to be really having a situation where we don't have proper coordination in Africa. And of course, when it comes to West Africa, you know, athletics is not as strong as in East Africa. So the decision makers should really come from either Uganda, Ethiopia, Tanzania, or Kenya, or even South Africa, so that we focus on the issues of athletics, mainly to assist our athletes and make sure that competitions also grow in our African continent.
Now, and this means now that for the athletes, when it comes to this season, what happens to the likes of, you know, Kibiwo Kandie and Ronex, all those who are looking forward to represent the country? And if they break camp, means that if they're to join the track and field series, they would have to join at the second or third event. What's the impact of this?
Hello.
Hello, yes. The impact of breaking camp, what's the impact of this on an athlete's calendar? Because for some of them, they've had to cancel other engagements that they may have had so that they can don Kenyan colors.
I think I'm not getting you clearly. There's a break in connection. Can you repeat it again?
Okay, let me repeat that question again. What is the impact of the cancellation of the Africa Cross Country Championships to the planning of events by athletes and their representatives?
It's really unfortunate that the connection here is really bad. It is breaking again, and I cannot get you clearly.
Okay, we will try and get your connection correct, but the story that we are trying to get from Barnaba Korir is the impact of the cancellation of the Africa Cross Country Championships that have been postponed for the third time. The first time that the Africa Cross Country Championships were postponed was last year, and this was because Togo were holding their presidential elections. So a request was made to the Confederation of African Athletics so that they postponed the events. And then the coronavirus pandemic, it hit Africa, and that meant that there was a lot of restriction of movement, and thus the event could not be held, and it was put back by a year. It was supposed to take place on the weekend of the 6th and 7th of March. And then again on Wednesday, communication coming in from CAA that Togo said, we've got a coronavirus situation in the country and we cannot risk the lives of athletes. And so, Mr. Korir, I hope if you can get it, let me ask this question again. What's the impact when it comes to event planning for athletes and their representatives?
First of all, you know, the impact is devastating because most of our athletes also depend on their earnings through competitions. An event like the African Cross Country would have given the athletes an opportunity to earn something and also to launch, especially the new athletes, to launch their careers from the competitions. And when you look at the races that were cancelled last year, it really affected our athletes' competitions. We started well this year, and then all of a sudden, almost all the races have been cancelled. There are no marathon competitions this April and until October. So you can imagine the impact that has on our athletes. the competitions that we have over the weekends in Kenya here, you saw last weekend we had the 2-day competitions on a Saturday and Sunday, and the turnout was high, and our athletes are doing very well. It shows also that even though our athletes are training very hard and they're in shape, unfortunately, they don't get enough competitions to support them, especially those who may not be having employment. And it has been really having a very difficult period for our athletes, and we hope that maybe this will change in due course. Although you can see now there's some rise in the COVID-19 in some areas. So in Europe there are no races. In Africa, you see now there are no coordinated events that go on, especially in West African region. We have some events going on in Tanzania, very little in Ethiopia, none in Uganda, and of course in Kenya it's only the weekend meeting. So we can only say that at the moment we request even the sponsors in this country to give more support to the events locally, so that at least our athletes can earn something that can sustain them until the time comes for them.
Now, let's move on to something else. Part of the team that was to travel to Togo was the under-18 side. So you've got the boys team that was to go to run 6 kilometers. Then you've got the girls team running 5 kilometers. Tell us about the introduction of this age grade event, considering that at a global stage, the only time you'd see under-18 events would be the Youth Olympics.
Yes, unfortunately, World Athletics changed the strategy. They canceled the events of World Under-18, and that was actually the point where we introduced our young athletes to but in Africa, at least CAS saw it important that we continue with such events, and that's why we had the African Under-18 and Under-20 together. So that we keep encouraging our young athletes to continue training, and they have some competitions also to launch their career through the Under-18, Under-20, and eventually transition to the seniors. So it is equally important that we continue doing that to the grassroots, to build kids athletics, and then eventually Under-18, Under-20, and then transit to the seniors, especially in Africa. It's part of the development of athletics in our continent.
And over the weekend, we had the first Athletics Kenya track and field meeting, and a new challenge is arising now. And considering that Nyanza North was to host this meeting, so first we had the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga University declining, Maseno University declining before bringing it to Nyayo. What are the plans now going forward? Do you have the Nyayo National Stadium as a home for the next 3 meetings, or are you looking at, for example, Embu, which is supposed to host the next track and field meeting?
We have had a discussion with the executive, especially with the AGA president, and so many other considerations that we have to look into now. One, we have to also look at the spread of COVID-19 and see the impact on our athletes. Two, we have to look at the stadiums. You know, most of our stadiums are under renovation, and you can see that we have to also consider the athletes in case of if the stadiums are not ready. If you see Maseno, the field, even if it was ready, was not good for our athletes to compete in. So it brings us back now to the challenges athletes are facing, not only athletes but also other sportsmen and women in this country, where our stadiums are not really ready. They're under renovation, although some of them have been under renovation for the last 5 years or more. And it's really unfortunate that although the government is trying its best, that we are still behind in that. So what we decided, or what we are thinking of doing, is that we bring back all the events, weekend meetings to Nairobi, to ensure that at least that Nyayo Stadium we have the tartan. Our athletes have also infrastructure and also equipment that they will use in that competition. We have the field events, we have the sprinters, and they have practically everything, and then officials also will guide them. And I think the best way that we can gather for their interest at the moment is let them, just all of them compete in Nyayo, so that they can also have proper timing. We have an electronic timing machine that is working now, so that in case they qualify, then it can be certified to participate during the Olympics. So those are the things that we are considering, and I'm sure that the AK president will announce soon that all the meets should be held in Nairobi, at least for the time being. And I hope that the regions will understand the reasons why we are doing that.
All right, Barnaba Korir, he's a member of the Athletics Kenya Executive Committee. Mr. Korir, just hold on for some time, but now we move over to Parliament buildings, where the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Honorable Justin Muturi, is leading the process for the signing of performance contracts by staff of the Parliamentary Service Commission.
Who is acting executive director of IHRM, who have led this consultancy that is culminating in the auspicious event that we have today. As consultancies go, I think I have to say that we have worked well with IHRM, and I'm confident that when she comes to speak, she will confirm that there were no phone calls from the Office of the Secretary or any other interference in the prosecution of this very important task. But I want to express a singular gratitude at the level of cooperation that we have enjoyed working with this very professional outfit of Ms. Irene Kimashia and her team. Mr. Chairman, with your permission, allow me then to call Ms. Irene Kimashia to come and make a few remarks. Thank you very much, sir.
I beg your guidance, Chair. Do I speak from here?
Those are pictures coming to you from Parliament buildings, where the staff of the Parliamentary Service Commission are going to be at the National Assembly chambers, and they are there so that they can sign their performance contracts, and this is happening right now. We will be going back to the National Assembly chambers when the Speaker of the National Assembly, who is also the chair of the Parliamentary Service Commission, will be speaking. So we get back into a conversation around athletics and some things that we'd like to mention coming into the year 2021. And Poland is going to be hosting the World Relays event. And Kenya is going to be doing the trials on the 27th of March, and that's going to take place at the Nyayo National Stadium. And Barnaba Korir, who's a member of the Athletics Kenya Executive, is on Zoom speaking to us from Eldoret. And from the 3 meetings that you've held so far around the relays, what has been the learning experience for the athletes?
Well, you know, the last 3 meetings has been especially for the sprinters. It has given them opportunity to compete and weigh their performance after the preparation. And I think if you look at their performances and the timings that have come out in the last meetings, they are doing very well. And in fact, I was very surprised the way their performance. I was expecting maybe they would have problems because last year they did not have any other competitions that could measure their performance. Going by the results of the weekend meetings, I would confidently say that there's no difference now, despite the COVID-19, from the period that they were free training and without any restrictions. You realize that they are even running, others are running faster now, maybe because they have rested enough, and turning in good times. So when we go for the trials, for selecting the team to compete during the World Relays in Poland, I think we have a big opportunity to have good times that will allow our athletes to be given a chance or the lens to compete in Poland.
Well, talking about the relays, is that the 4x400 meter relay team has not been at a globe event for quite some time. And the reason is the entry criteria that is used now by World Athletics for such competitions, whether be the World Championships or the Olympics, is the top 8 at the World Relays that happens just before that championships, or if you're in the top 16 in the world, which means just another 8 teams that are selected. How much is being done, for example, to see that Kenya gets back into that event, considering that Kenya has been an Olympic champion 1972 and also a silver that was won in 1968?
I think at least Kenya is currently focusing on the sprinters to ensure that they have all the equipment necessary, technical know-how, and the support that they require for preparation. Today, we have selected a team of 24 athletes that will be reporting to Kasarani Stadium to start preparation for the competition on 27 of this month. So we have plans and strategies on how we can improve that. If you look back 2 years ago when they were running in Asaba, Nigeria, they actually qualified, but unfortunately the track that they were using was not certified by World Athletics, and therefore they did not make it to World Championship because of that problem that they had there. We have the athletes that are capable of running faster. The only thing that we require, as I've always we have always said in Athletics Kenya, is that if we can get the technical equipment, the timing machines, and also technical know-how, our athletes are capable of doing that. And of course, if we get the support from the government, because it is quite expensive to procure equipment that our athletes should be using, especially sprinters and.
Okay.
In 1968, did very well in 1972. I don't see the reason why we cannot do it now. So it's just a matter of focus and ensuring that the athletes get the support that they require to attain the minimum standards for the Olympics.
Now, the plans for this, as per World Athletics, as the team prepares to go to Poland, to Silesia, Poland, for this event that will take place in early May, what are the plans for the relay team? Could they be invited to meetings around where they could meet some of the best in Africa? You could be thinking about Nigerians, athletes from Botswana, and also our friends Uganda, who seem to be rising quite fast.
Yes, as I said before, Athletics Kenya has put structures in place to ensure that we have countries coming into Kenya. We have invited Botswana, Tanzania, Uganda, Ethiopia to attend the meetings on the 27th to compete with our athletes. So that those are in place, and for our team to qualify and the times to be accepted, we have to have a minimum of 3 countries participating, and we have invited those countries. In fact, this morning we received a call from Tanzania that their teams are ready and they're going to send their names for registration so that we have a credible competition that, in case our athletes qualify, will be certified by World Athletics.
Now, we also have got quite the African Championships that will be taking place in Algeria. The process for selecting the team, and also considering that we're going to have the Olympics in July and August. How much participation of the A-list athletes would you like to see in Algeria? Because previously you've seen some athletes will say, let me not look at the African Championships and focus on the money circuit, or if it's a year where there is a World Championships or a Commonwealth Games, focus on that.
Our athletes now have come to understand the importance of developing our own sports structures and systems in our regions, especially East African region, West African region, and South African region. So when we request the athletes to take part in international, not international competition, African competitions, like the African Senior Championship that will be in June, it is important for them that we elevate such competitions to international status. so that when they compete, they are able also to get support from the sponsors. They can also win big prize money, and to develop also the systems that will encourage competitions in Africa. When you look back now that Europe closed their borders because of COVID-19, our athletes could not travel to the US, our athletes could not also go to Asian countries because of the COVID-19. Then it comes now to realization that, yes, it is time that we see also our regions, our continent, to develop also and encourage sports promotion so that there are competitions within localities. And in case of a problem, they can still compete and earn a living through those competitions instead of waiting only European and American races. So they have understood. To championship, our elite athletes will have to participate, and we will require them to be there to ensure that by their participation.
Now, this is a year for the World Under-20 Championships. Kenya was to host the event last year, but it was postponed by World Athletics due to the coronavirus pandemic situation across the world. Sport is now learning how to manage this. It is leading the way. Actually, I've got to say that. It's the one thing that, everybody said, sport is dead, but they found a way. Kenya's plans for hosting this event in August, including preparations for Team Kenya.
Yes, you realize that I can start with Team Kenya. Last year, we were supposed to have the competition 20 July. It was postponed because of the reasons we all know. And until now, this year, we are going to have it from the 17th to 22nd of August. Our athletes continue to train. We went around to make sure that the camps they were in, we gave them the support that was necessary. And in November last year, we had a test event for those athletes that were in the camps, and we were very happy with the turnout, happy with the performance. It was very good. So it's a continuation. We also saw most of the athletes that will try to qualify for the World Under-20 in August competing during the National Cross Country Championship, and they did extremely well. We are now going to follow them with the weekend meetings, and in April, we have them in several camps to ensure that they continue their training. So it's not a worry for us because we continued the preparation, we supported them, we were in contact with them throughout the year, and we continue doing that at the moment. The only weakness that we might have is, of course, as usual, the field events and maybe the sprints. Otherwise, the middle and long distance, we have confidence that we are going to do well.
Mr. Barnaba Koreiru is a member of the Athletics Kenya Executive Committee speaking to us for Eldoret. Thank you very much for your time this morning. And also the conversation about the cross-country team. We hope that the Confederation of African Athletics will find a host for the cross-country championships. Otherwise, it will have been quite an expensive affair for the country and other people who are there. So we shall be taking a just little short break, and when we get back, let's get into a conversation about football. Remember, KBC Channel 1 is your true sports partner. We've got the Under-20 AFCON going on. The semis are on tonight. We'll be talking about them. But right now, let's listen to the Honorable Justin Muturi, who's the Speaker of the National Assembly. He's speaking at the National Assembly chambers, where the signing of performance contracts by staff of the Parliamentary Service Commission is happening.
Some legislations which were meant to be passed within 6 months, others 1 year, others 18 months, and all that can to be done within a very short space of time, because some and a lot of bearing on some of the issues, some of the matters that have been ushered in the new constitution, not least, of course, the bringing forth of the Commission on Revenue Allocation. And as you also remember, there was also the Commission in implementation of the Constitution, which under a lifespan of 5 years, with the possibility of enhancements. And therefore, Parliament took that much longer time to ensure that it dealt with all the other legislations so as to bring on board all that which needed to be brought, and particularly in the implementation of the Constitution. Of course, finally, we did pass our Parliamentary Service Act. We ought to have finished doing that in the year 2017, but as you know, 2017 was a hectic year, so we still had to push it to 2019. But we are happy that we now have it, and it now reflects the true nature of our Parliament being bicameral, and notably the provisions about the functions of the Commission, what it is required to do, what is expected of it, both by members and by the staff. And I'm therefore happy this morning to make my official statement on this exercise in the presence of my fellow commissioners, one of who was not recognized early in the morning on account of his height, I think, but he has suddenly again vanished. Sometimes when he sits, it's very difficult to know whether he is sitting or standing. But I suspect you may see somebody almost at the same height as the sitting places. The Honorable Commissioner Ben Mumanyi, my friend. And let me also say that indeed, I'm very happy that the team of the commissioners whom we appointed and delegated the duty of liaising with the consultants, Commissioner Rachel Ameso and Commissioner Samuel Chepkonga, have indeed spent a lot of their time also in ensuring that whatever we are doing meets the expectations, led by the technical staff, led by Mr. Masinde, the Senior Deputy Director, Budget Office. Yeah, I was saying something earlier on. Now there, that one looks like Commissioner Ben Mumanyi. You know, I noticed that you had not been introduced earlier on, and I suspect the person who was introducing, Mr. Masinde, looked around and wasn't able to see you. Now, let me make my official statement, being that today symbolizes the beginning of the era of performance contracting in the parliamentary service, in which we will demand exemplary and administrative and technical competence, enhanced accountability, and greater focus. I'm now in my eighth year as chair of the Parliamentary Service Commission. During this period,
Assembly, Justin Muturi speaking at Parliament buildings.
Staff welfare. We have endeavored to make PSC a competitive institution. We've also put in place policies geared towards ensuring that there is equity in capacity development opportunities. More medical policies, and even during this COVID period, we put in place some measures to cushion you as you work from home. It's no doubt that the Parliamentary Service Commission continues to be an attractive employer from both the public and the private sectors. It is therefore only fair that we demand commensurate effort from your part. That is the journey that we embark on today. With the adoption of the 2019-2030 strategic plan and the enactment of the Parliamentary Service Act 2019, the new policy direction was inevitable. Strategic plan pillar number two in our strategic plan is excellence in service delivery. This pillar focuses on enhancing the value of services offered to members of Parliament, and our strategic plan is clear that this pillar will be supported by, among others, institutionalizing performance management systems across the service. In fact, according to the implementation matrix provided in the strategic plan, we are behind schedule. This performance management system should have been introduced in 2019. Today, all officers in PSC scale number 14 and above will sign contracts for variation of their terms of employment, and in addition, the top 4 officers in the management will equally sign their balanced scorecards. It is the expectation of the Commission that this fusion of the fixed-term contract and the performance management framework that we have introduced will enable us to keep track of whether we are achieving our strategic objectives. We want to fully institutionalize our strategic plan, and going forward, all your decisions and efforts must be aligned with the strategic plan. It should now become part of your lingua franca. We also want to recognize performance. You will agree with me that in the current system, the diligent and hardworking officers are accorded the same opportunities as those who do not exert the same efforts. This is certainly not fair, and it is one of the challenges that we intend to address with this new system. We want to ensure that Kenyans are getting value for their money. The rallying call in the public has been the ballooning wage bill without proportionate returns. As a Commission, we have a duty to ensure that our institution remains people-centered. We must therefore streamline our operations to ensure that every shilling that the taxpayers give to finance this institution is utilized effectively and efficiently. Ladies and gentlemen, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus saying that the only thing that is constant in life is change. How we respond to change is therefore what makes it the difference.
That is the Speaker of the National Assembly, the Honorable Justin Muturi, who is also the chair of the Parliamentary Service Commission, and he was talking about, and he's giving a speech on a ceremony where staff at the Parliamentary Service Commission are signing their performance contracts. The top 4 officers of the Parliamentary Service Commission who are on employment will sign their balanced scorecards. Others will have fixed-term contracts, and also he's made the announcement that they're going to streamline operations to ensure that there is effective use of resources. Kamcha Medza is our reporter at that event, and she's going to be giving us full details of the performance contract signing event at the National Assembly chambers. We now move over to Mombasa, and our reporter Michael Mwadiga is on standby. Michael, over to you. Today is the International Wheelchair Day. The celebrations are taking place in Mombasa. Tell us about that event.
Good morning to you, Ahome. We're coming to you. Good morning to you, home. We are coming to you live from Mombasa. We are at a Bambololo workshop. Today is International Wheelchair Day. It's being commemorated here in Mombasa, and it marks the today marks the 10th annual event of the International Wheelchair Day. And of course, today they'll be talking about the positive impacts the wheelchair have made for the mobility of people living with a disability. And I'm hereby joined by the resource manager that's from Mombasa County for persons living with disability, who will tell us about today's event. What are they going to do, or what are they going to tell those living with disabilities, and of course giving them the mobility chairs so as to make it easy for them to be moving around with their daily activities. Welcome, madam. Tuambie tu kwa majina unaitwa nani na kuhusiana na sherehe ya leo.
Kwa majina naitwa Jemaima Kutata, Miss President Mombasa County, Resource Mobilizer APDK Coast Branch. Na siku ya leo ni siku ya kimataifa ambapo ulimwengu mzima unasherehekea siku ya kiti cha magurudumu. Siku ya magurudumu ilianzishwa na Steve Wilkinson ambaye alizaliwa na ulemavu wa spina bifida. Hiyo ni ulemavu wa kuwa na utofu katika uti wa mgongo. Na alikuwa na ile nia ya kwamba kwa vile alizaliwa na ulemavu huo ikawa ni mpaka mzazi wake ambebe kila mahali mpaka alipopata kiti cha magurudumu ambacho kilimwezesha kutembea. Akawa na ile nia ya kwamba hata mimi nitaweza kusaidia wenzangu. Akawa na ile attitude, I can do it attitude. Na alipokuwa na hiyo I can do it attitude, ndio aliweza kupitia kwa mazungumzo na kwa social media, akaweza kushare hiyo maneno na wenzake, ndio wakaweza kuanzisha siku ya International Wheelchair Day ambayo inasherekewa tarehe 1 mwezi wa 3. Na hii sherehe imeweza kusherekewa katika nchi kadhaa kama Australia, Nepal, United Kingdom, United States of America, na hata hapa nchini kwetu Kenya. Sasa ndio tunahamasisha watu na pia tunaweza kusherekea hii siku. Kwa WHO wanasema ya kwamba mlemavu mmoja kwa walemavu 300 hawezi kabisa kununua kiti cha magurudumu, na approximately 20 millions ya watu, maelfu ya watu wengi hapa katika ulimwengu unaokuwa hawawezi kununua kiti cha magurudumu kile ambacho kinawawezesha kutembea. Kwa hivyo hii huwa ni siku maalum ambayo tunahamasisha jamii ya kwamba watu walio na ulemavu ni watu wa maana katika jamii, na kiti cha magurudumu ni kiti muhimu kinachokumwezesha kutembea kama kazini, nyumbani anapofanya mambo yake na hata kwingineko. Kama shirika la APDK, Association for the Physically Disabled of Kenya, kiti cha magurudumu kwetu sisi ni nini? Kiti cha magurudumu kwetu APDK ni kiti cha magurudumu ambacho kinadumu. Kiti ambacho kinaweza kutembea katika njia zetu za Kiafrika, ambayo tunajua njia zetu ni za maram. Kunakuta wakati mwingine unatembea katika pavement ambayo imevunjika. Kiti cha magurudumu kinachofaa ni kile pia mtu ameweza kupimwa. Mara nyingi unakuta mtu ananunuliwa kiti cha magurudumu ambacho hakifai. Kiti cha magurudumu kinastahili kumfaa yule ambaye anakitumia hicho kiti kulingana na vipimo vyake na mambo mengine.
Naam, na nikuulize tu labda kwa kifupi tu, labda Mombasa, labda kufikia sasa mna mipangilio kuweza kuhakikisha kwamba watu wanapata? Naam.
Kusema kweli, Mobility Aid Workshop ya APDK imeweza kufikia watu wengi, kwa sababu hii ni karakana ambayo ina Mobility Aid Workshop ambao sisi tunatengeneza viti vya magurudumu vya aina 3. Tuko na special seat ya watoto ambayo ina kiti hapa mbele, ambapo hicho kiti kinasaidia mtoto kusoma na pia kuweka vitu vyake anapocheza. Pia tuna kiti ambayo tunaita tricycle, ambao wengi wetu leo mnaona wanavitumia hapa. Ndio tricycle. Tricycle inamsaidia kumove around kwenda mahali popote anapoenda, na tuna wheelchair ambayo inatumiwa ile ya kusukuma. Na wheelchair ambayo ni ya special seat inaenda kwa 24,000, na pia hii ya tricycle na wheelchair inaenda kwa 20,000 pesa za Kenya.
Na asante sana kwa maelezo hayo mazuri sana. And I'll be joined by also one of the officials here at Bombolulu Workshop who is in charge of the manufacturing of the wheelchairs, these mobility chairs, and he'll be telling us what the production they're making here so as to ensure that these people get the mobility chairs to make it easy for them to move around. Welcome sir. Kwa majina unaitwa nani na labda production iko namna gani hapa?
Okay, I'm Joseph Gakunga, Juguna, an orthopedic technologist working at APDK Coast Branch. And basically what we normally do is production of appropriate wheelchairs. By appropriate, I mean is the wheelchair depends with the condition of the client. So we use the WHO guidelines, which are 8, so that we can enable our clients get an appropriate seat so that they can be able to do their daily duties, like they can be able to be mobile. The purpose of the wheelchairs is to be able to facilitate them to move from one place to another. And the main thing, or the main objective that we normally go for, is at least to make these patients to be dependent, not independent, so that they can be able even to work same as the other people. Because for many years you'll find that persons living with disabilities have been stigmatized in one way or another. So by giving them a room and a chance of a place where they can be able to move like the other people, work like the other people, like here in Bombolulu workshop, many of the workers here are PWDs, and as you can see, there are so many of them using the wheelchairs. Yeah. So about production again is really there is a need, and a big need outside there that if we can be able to be funded, because the materials also are very expensive, so for other people they feel it's very hard to afford them. That's why you'll walk around even town, you'll see people using wheelchairs that are worn out so badly that they cannot be able to, until they get a donor. That's when you can see a person with a new wheelchair. So what you can appeal maybe to the government to try and even cut the cost of having these materials, because as you can see they use local metals. If we can get a waiver on these materials, the production of wheelchairs, the prices will go down at a higher charge, because basing on the persons living with disability with cards, so that they can be able to be affordable. Thank you.
Okay, so now, okay, thank you so much. The orthopedician, of course, telling us the production here and what they're doing to ensure that there is mobility for the persons living with disability, to make them dependent in their day-to-day activities. That's what we have for now from Mombasa County. Of course, we'll be coming back to you later in the day to give you more details as to regarding the event. As the CEO of the Persons Living, the National Council for Persons Living with Disability, Mr. Harun Hassan, is around in this attending at this event. That's what we have for you from Mombasa County, and back to you in Nairobi.
Thank you very much, Michael Mwadiga. He's our reporter in Mombasa. It is the International Wheelchair Day. The celebration is taking place at the Bombolulu workshop, and this is where they make wheelchairs. There's one for children, which includes a little table or some form of a desk that they can use maybe for their studies to play or do all that, the tricycle, and also the usual push rim wheelchairs that we know about. A full report on that will be coming on in our later bulletins. Now, time to get into another conversation, and this time around football. But before I get into that, let me introduce the lady who's at the bottom right of your screen. That is Lenta Odingo, who is our sign language interpreter. Now, on to a conversation about football. And remember that KBC Channel 1 is your true sports partner. And I've got to say, from January, it has been an African football festival. The Championship of African Nations, just a short break, and we're back with the Africa Under-20 Championships and also the CAF Champions League, and the CAF Confederation Cup draw has already been conducted, which means there's a lot coming. And this evening on Y254, we shall have Ghana play Gambia in the semi-final of the Africa Under-20 Championships, the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. Remember, this tournament is being played in Mauritania. And at 10:30 p.m. on KBC Channel 1, our neighbors to the west, Uganda, will be playing against Tunisia. Remember, those two matches are live. And to have a conversation about this tournament that has been going on, we're joined by a football data analyst, John Agriotieno. John, welcome.
It is a pleasure, sir. Good morning.
Good morning to you. And first, give me an overall outlook of the CAF Under-20 AFCON.
I think it's gotten better with time. More goals are coming in now, an average of around 2.83 goals. An average of around 2.83 goals, whereas in the previous competition, we had, I think, 1.98. So I think you see that it's getting better. The goals are coming in. And as well, there's a lot of exciting youngsters that are showing us that it doesn't really matter their age, they're ready to take on the world.
And I want to first mention about one country, Cameroon. We've seen them have the sons of three legends. Yeah. Now, Sunday Junior, we've had Miller, and we've had Eto'o. Yeah. What is the story of these three players, despite them Cameroon having been eliminated 4-2 on post-match penalties by Ghana?
I think for Cameroon, we have to go back to, those players you just mentioned, and the fact that they had foresight for their sons and for their nation, and that they allowed them to represent their country, in as much as probably they are not born in Cameroon, but as they say, East or West, home is best. They have allowed their sons to take that opportunity and represent their nation. And I think it's good as well for the country overall, for the morale, that you're able to see these young players coming into the fold, trying to fit into their father's shoes and making their country proud.
Let's now talk about Uganda. Interesting players. We've seen Bogere, we've seen Kakuza, we've seen Serwada. And also their goalkeeper, Kipkorach. What is the kind of development that we're seeing from Uganda? Consider this, they played at Jan, they are at the Under-20 championships, and they will be playing at the Under-17 championships.
I think we have to go back to around 2015 when they started with the club licensing. Unlike in Kenya, where club licensing has been used to probably punish other teams, what Uganda has done is to be able to, hold the hands of clubs and take them through club licensing. Case in point is, for you to get the license to play in the league, as of last season, you had to have an under-21 side, all right? An under-21 and an under-17 side, all right? And they are promising that in the next 2 years, for you to play in the league, you must also have an under-15 side. So what they are doing is giving the country an option of so many players at the bottom as you scale upwards. And it is really interesting that theirs has borne fruit really, really fast. It doesn't happen in every country like that. But for them, they are competing in a region where not many countries have taken club licensing seriously. Case in point, our own country is not at these competitions.
Well, Kenya actually did play at all those regional competitions which were used as qualifiers for the CAF Under-20 AFCON, but Uganda leading the way. And they play against Tunisia tonight, and this is at 10:30 p.m.
Yes.
Let's take a look at the Tunisian side and the kind of thing that we've seen from them. And also remember, Tunisia, they didn't eliminate a Mickey Mouse. They did eliminate a Mickey Mouse, a side that's not Mickey Mouse, Morocco.
Yes, Tunisia have a way of grinding out results. They're not going to play the prettiest of games. They're trying to win them 1-0. They don't concede too many, to be honest, and that is something that is all over, from the Under-17, the Under-19, the Under-21, until the senior levels. And case in point, the last game, 0-0, you would say it was dull, but I would say they realized probably they wouldn't win it early. So what do? Take it to the end, try and milk in another 30 minutes, and then try and score in your penalties. Look at it, 4-1. They only missed one, to be honest.
Now, let's also talk about now Ghana, the Under-20 side. Looking back, you'd have to go back, 11 and a half years, September of 2009, when they won the Under-20 World Cup in Egypt. That side went on to shine in 2010 due to injuries to the senior players. So there they were at the Africa Cup of Nations in Angola and also went to the World Cup in South Africa. What kind of Under-20 side are we seeing from Ghana at the moment?
I think that the most improved side, to be honest. Remember, the last time Ghana won this competition was 2009. And of the 4 teams remaining, it's only Ghana that have the pedigree of having won it in the past. I tip them highly to win this. But again, it goes back to what they're doing with their clubs at the grassroots. The Under-21s and the Under-19s, a lot of them. The top scorer right now, not Andre, but what's his name? The boy from Dreams FC. He's already top scorer at this competition. He has 2 goals for them. And you're thinking because he has another 2 games or even 3 to get more, he will be probably top scorer and probably the competition's best player. So for them, again, it's what they do at the grassroots, at the clubs. Dreams FC is a brilliant example of what they're doing, and thankfully, it's paying.
Then, the Gambia, you've got to say, the one match that I really watched and told people, look out for this game, because it's the one that will give you the fireworks that you expect. It was Gambia versus the Central African Republic at the quarterfinal stage. Eventually, the Gambia won by 3-0.
Yes.
Gambia, this is a country that's 100% surrounded geographically by Senegal. Is the greatness of Senegal rubbing onto them?
Not really. They have also done their homework over a period of time. I remember watching the Gambian team in 2014, the national team. They were beaten by, of course, all their neighbors then, but they were playing really young players, some as young as 17. Also remember, there's a huge contingent of Gambian players abroad, in Belgium, in Sweden, they're all around that area. They're now milking onto that talent and bringing them back home. You look at a player like, is he called Madu, the number 9. He is actually mentioned as a midfielder, but if you look at how he plays, he's a striker, an out-and-out number 9. He's really lethal on his right foot. And if you look at the highlights of his games, is that At age 16, at age 15, he was already scoring goals abroad. So now he's just doing what he's been taught over a long period of time. And that is what they're milking on. I'm not saying that the league is the greatest, but what I'm saying is they have a great contingent outside there.
And this tapping of the diaspora players, with the new regulations that have come in, especially when it comes to transfers, where they tell you it doesn't matter whether it's about age grade football, representative, I mean, any form of representative football, it's 3 senior appearances. At what risk is the Gambia at of losing some of these players to the countries where they are domiciled?
I think a great risk, especially the ones that are really, really talented. Because I'm thinking if a player is really, really talented, he's in Sweden, for example, or he's in maybe Belgium, and the Belgians and the Swedish are offering more money, probably he would go that way and settle in clubs there. But again, the glory of playing for your country, for the flag, also supersedes a lot of these things. It's an emotional thing that goes around with footballers, and I think every sportsman, as it is. So I think they will gain more. I know they lose a few, of course. The creme de la creme will go, but the few that they will get. And then as well as the coaching expertise that is also outside there, when they tap into it, surely should give them results. Yeah.
Now, let's move on to another aspect of African football, and this is the CAF Champions League. And before we get into that, a reminder that this evening at 7 p.m, watch Ghana play against Gambia, and this is in the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. It will be live on Y254. And at 10:30 p.m, Uganda will be playing against Tunisia. This match is going to be live on KBC Channel 1, the semi-finals of the Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. Let's talk about the Champions League, and let's look at how Africa is responding to play around COVID times. And I'll make a special reference to South Africa. Yeah. Not many countries are allowing travelers from South Africa due to the second strain of the coronavirus. Yeah. We saw Morocco do that. We saw Algeria do that. But CAF also have got their regulations that if you miss a match that due to COVID-related things, depending on who is at fault, then it's a 2-0 result, in which case Morocco denied Kaizer Chiefs entry, so that means Wydad were to lose 2-0, and in the case of Algeria, then Belouizdad were to lose 2-0. But how should this be handled, given that sport is basically operating in a bubble?
To be honest with you, the examples you have given are examples of clubs that surely have money and can take care of this business. If Gor Mahia would find themselves in such a situation, I mean, with all due respect, if they find themselves in such a situation, then I think 2-0, are forfeiting of a match. But all that notwithstanding is that CAF also have to, look at these regulations again, especially for the teams at the bottom. Not everyone has this financial might and financial muscle to be able to compete. The Mamelodis, the Wydads, And so instead of just letting 2-0 go away, and probably there's a player who's really good, who should have used this opportunity to market himself, they should, lessen the rules. Also try and assist financially, to be honest, because a team that probably has to fly to even Spain or Dubai before they come back into a country in Africa surely need financial assistance.
Now, the results from the matches played yesterday, we had Casablanca 4-0 winners over Kaizer Chiefs.
Msuva. I thought it was a Msuva show. He did brilliantly well. Kaizer Chiefs were not ready for this game.
Are they ready for this stage? Because this is the first time. So. We know Kaizer Chiefs as a huge name in continent. When you listen to them, Amakosi or whatever. But it's the first time they're playing in the Champions League.
I know, they're not ready for this stage. And even if you look at their domestic results as it is, players like Kune, who I think were at fault yesterday, are literally at the sunset of their careers. They need to, try and jig it up. And again, Kaizer Chiefs fans, it's the hope that kills you. Keep it low. Kaizer Chiefs are not a decent club anymore. They are good, but not decent to the levels of Wydad. I think the CAF Confederations Cup could have been a better place for them. But so, as it is, that in the CAF Champions League, let them get their goals and learn from it.
And when you get China, you've had it yourself. Now, let's talk about the other game. Mamelodi Sundowns, 5-1 winners over Shabab Riyadh Belouizdad, CR Belouizdad, played in Dar es Salaam. But is this really what Belouizdad wanted, given that, a handball in the 3rd minute of the game, so deliberate, straight red card, game was collapsed for 87 minutes.
I think in the first half, they held their cool after the Kidad red card. And they should have just, try and push it on to the second half. But as it was, Mamelodi Sundowns also stepped another gear in the second half. You look at the goals, they're not, even if they were 11 versus 11, they would have still gotten in. So for Belouizdad, they have to go back to the drawing board. That was a home game for them, played away. Yes. There are a lot of Tanzanian fans supporting Mamelodi Sundowns. I hope that the return leg, which will be played in South Africa, I'm hoping, if the rules change, that they shall put in a better game. But as it was yesterday, I think that goal difference as well also hurts them in the final look of the table.
Now, moving away from continental football, let's go to the FKF Premier League. The matches were played over the weekend and quite some interesting results. Gor Mahia losing by 2-1 to Nzoia Sugar. Let's start with that game. I agree.
One of the oldest rivalries in Kenyan football. I don't think the younger generation understand this. But remember, these teams first met in 1979. Until 1988, Gor Mahia had never beaten them at home. That changed in between, and now Gor Mahia have won 2 out of 4 that they have played since they came back into the league. But yesterday's results also shows you one thing, that Gor Mahia can be beaten by any side. Nzoia are not the most decent of sides, as well as Gor Mahia, but it's that feeling of a big team that Gor Mahia carries around, gets them results sometimes. Yesterday, unfortunately, it wasn't that day for them. They lost 1-2.
But that game was played on Saturday evening. Yeah. Now, Bidco United, let me just try and be a newspaper guy. Oil fries beer.
I don't know how that works, but oil and beer never mix. Tusker FC, they've only lost 2 games this season. The opening game and now the last one. In between, they've had around, I think, 11 wins and I think 3 draws, or rather 2 draws. Tusker are coached by Robert Matibatano, the Lion as he calls himself. I think this is a little setback. They'll be back. They'll bounce back. Who do they face next? Posta Rangers. And you can imagine, Okumbi has lost his last 2 games. I think it's going to be a baptism of fire. He loses the 3rd one and Tusker get back to their winning ways.
Now, the one result that I want to talk about from yesterday, AFC Leopards, 2-1 winners over Kakamega Homeboys. And this was a game that, why you say AFC Leopards now are at their second home.
Yes, they are the second home, but I also remind you that they haven't won here since 2013. That's just how far it goes. And Shimanyula, the owner of Kakamega Homeboys, was just waxing lyrical about how they're going to get their normal 3 points. That wasn't to be the case yesterday. AFC Leopards, finally, they start to look like a team that can, compete for the title. I don't think they will win it this season, but they're looking really, really close. And the new coach, Asems, I think is doing a good job. He's brought in, better confidence. I thought Kimani brought in confidence, but now he's taking it a notch higher. And now FC Leopards are looking like a really properly organized team. Well-oiled machine, to be honest.
Well, talking about Kimani, the man they call Modo, Anthony Kimani, who's now the assistant coach of Bandari. Bandari did win by 2-0 against Ulinzi Stars. And here is the story. The coach and assistant coach of Bandari are former AFC Leopards coach and assistant coach. Talking about Andre Kasabungo and Anthony Kimani. How distant is Bandari? Because everyone asks, how come they don't deliver the results, being one institutional club, and it's the one club, I think, one of the few clubs in the country which should never complain about money or facilities or anything?
I think they have finally come out of that bubble of just relaxing and hoping they're not relegated. I think 2009, 2010, when we were speaking about Bandari, we were like, let them not get relegated. Then the years got by and they became a mid-table team. But remember, they have even come second, as close as last year. So now it's time for them to now step up to the next level. And that's why they brought this new coach. I'm not really sure if they will win the league because they don't really have an out-and-out striker who gets them a lot of goals as compared to teams like Kariobangi Sharks and the Tuskers. That's why they need to work on. But if it's a matter of confidence, then this new coach and Anthony Modo Kimani have brought that into the team.
Then finally, KCB getting hit 3-0 by Kariobangi Sharks. That's not a result everyone was it?
Not everyone was expecting, because I think at match day 10, match day 9, we were speaking about KCB would probably win the league. But Suffolk Park have a little boy there called Kapaito. I think he's 2 goals shy of 16 goals.
Yes,
he got
Kapaito.
last season. That boy is in red hot form. And I'm looking at their next opponents, which probably should be... Is it City Stars?
City Stars.
Yeah. You're looking at him and is thinking, probably I get 2 or 3 goals here and I should be able to be top scorer outrightly. But as it is now, KCB have to go back to the basics. I think they're really trying too hard. If you watch that game, they're really trying too hard. They have to come back to the basics. Take it easy. You're not going to win every single game in this league. It's a hard league. Try and take it easy. Win what you can win, as many as you can. If it's really hard, try and get a draw.
Something else, competition that we also have is the FKF Women's Cup. The introduction of cup competition for women, what's the overall impact of it for women's football?
The overall impact is, finally, the women have great opportunities to be seen. There's a lady probably playing in Division 2 or probably just, in the non-script leagues, and they get a chance to play in the FKF Women's Cup. And they take the opportunity and win it. I think you remember the stories of teams like GFC, 105 from Eldoret against Gor Mahia. Such shockers bring you 2, 3 new players that you never knew, and suddenly the big boys and the big girls are looking down and thinking, wait a minute, there's a player down here who I think is really good, we need to have them. So I think it's a great opportunity for the players and for those non-script coaches and clubs.
Let me just talk about some results and tell me what you think about this. Trans-Nzoia Falcons won, Kisumu All Starlets defeating Trans-Nzoia Falcons 5-4 on post-match penalties after they drew 2-2. Yeah. Then Bunyore Starlets drew 0-0 with Oserian Ladies and eventually won 5-4 on post-match penalties.
It's just the shockers I was speaking about, because honestly, you don't give Bunyore all that, chance before the game, and they go out there and do the business. Probably it's post-match penalties. You can say everyone has a chance, but even the ones who lost also had a chance. So I think back to my original point is everyone gets an opportunity now to try and go for it.
One question.
Yeah.
The once feared Makolandas got hit for 7 yesterday by Gospel Women. What happens around this?
Gospel Women are not a small team. They're not a small team. But I think 7-0 is, just over the top. But again, it means that women's football is getting tighter and closer. The competition is getting closer. Teams that were champions outright even before a game was kicked 3-4 seasons ago are no longer having that luxury anymore. And now the teams at the top have to really think, do we continue losing our players to probably Europe and Tanzania and not replacing them with players at that caliber and still expect to win? We now have to increase, number one, our scouting, and number two, even get our coaching better.
Well, John Agreton, he's a football data analyst. That's what you can see. He's picking out numbers, even the odd ones with, even the decimal numbers, and looking back at dates and things all through. Away with local football, let's go across borders now. And Arsenal, 3-1 winners over Leicester City in the English Premier League last night, and Tottenham Hotspur, 4-0 winners over Burnley. The question is, let me start with the Spurs-Burnley game. Sean Dyche has this reputation of having a side that is difficult to score against.
Yes.
But it's not. But it just turned out to be a totally different story this season.
I think based on just yesterday's game alone, and I think it's a stark reflection of so many other games, is that once the first goal goes in, then the confidence goes down, and the team opens up more, and they get to concede. If you look at the last 2 seasons where they were really compact, they were not conceding very easily, and probably if they conceded, it was late at the end of the game. But now when you concede 2 goals against Spurs, you are there thinking, do we go for it and try and get a 2-2? If we are too lucky, we can get a 3-2. But then when you try to do that, Spurs with Gareth Bale, Harry Kane, Son, then they hit you 3-4, and that's what happened yesterday.
Arsenal, 3-1 winners over Leicester.
Without
Willian,
Saka.
after all the stick he took before the match kicked off.
I think the fans need to understand that teams are picked in training, not on match days. Yes. And so I think Willian probably puts in a really great shift during training, and surely he leaves the coach with no option but to pick him. Again, remember, the coach also has to make sure that the fans understand that he brought this player from Chelsea for a reason, and now he has to play him.
Finally, is this gone with Manchester City? 20 on the run.
I think it's gone. 32 points at home, 30 points away, no teams even coming close. I don't want to say give them the title yet, but they look like they're going to be champions. I know we want to live in the past and think they're a small team. You know what? We're living in the moment, and they're a really, really big team.
John Agriotieno, he is a football data analyst, taking us through all that's been going through over the weekend when it comes to the world of football. Remember, it's going to be a football festive week on KBC Channel 1. Remember, Ghana against Gambia, and that's on Y254 at 7 p.m. Uganda against Tunisia, 10:30 p.m. on KBC Channel 1. And from tomorrow through Thursday, the DFB Pokal. So all those matches are going to be live on KBC. On behalf of the team that put together this edition of News Check, our production team, the editorial team, and the transmission team, and also our guests, Barnaba Korir, Felix Chieng, and also John Agriotieno. From me, I want to say thank you very much for viewing. Coming up next is our Swahili magazine, Tamrini. The host is Suleimanieri. Our sign language interpreter has been Lensa Odingo. Have a good one.